Welcome to Herp Talk Radio. I'm your host, Matthew, and my co-host,
Is Peggy Detmers.
coming to you live from the Black Hills.
It's Herp Talk Radio.
So, Peggy, how are the turtles?
They're doing great. They're growing much, and I'm really looking forward to releasing all these babies. Um, come June, July, once I get them to the point where the cranes can't eat them. But yeah,
What?
they're fun. And my breeding partner, he's down in Tennessee, and or is it Kentucky? I'll have to look again. I've only seen one turtle so far, and now I'm sending him all the babies, these hets that I'm producing out of the clown's brother, mated with a Western painted female that I raised. So I know she wasn't bred by any other male, and so it's going good. It's the box turtles are. I would love to find somebody who would love to take a blind box turtle off my hands because boy is
I
he
know you would. You've been trying on me now for a while, and
yeah
like,
I
maybe, but you know what it's gonna be is you're just gonna end up driving to my house and dropping it off and being like, "Here, take this thing. I don't know what to do with it anymore," and drive away. And then what? Now I have it, and I'm stuck.
once it's I've got a habitat built for him outside, and so he's gonna be great once the weather warms up. Then and I'll still have to change his water quite a bit. Once he's out there because they like just little tiny shallow pools. And so, and most box turtles love to go in there and bathe once or twice a day. And why they do it, they use it also as their toilet. So you're constantly, refreshing their little drinking pool, bathing pool. And, he and the other rescue box turtle are the only terrestrial turtles that I've kept long term. I've babysat, friends as turtles that or tortoises and box turtles that were deployed, or they were moving and setting up, and then they'd come and collect their animals. But yeah, this is the first that I'm going to have them long term if I so decide. And I'm so deciding, kind of not wanting to. They're getting in the way of my painting and drawing and sculpting time. And now with having also a new puppy, well, he's 1 year and 4 months old. It's
So you got a new puppy then, huh?
yeah,
I mean, not
yeah.
like I don't already know, but the listeners sure don't know.
I sure don't know. Yeah, I think he's gonna freak people out when we take him to the parks and people see him because he literally does. And it wasn't, I thought it was just Joel and I that saw it, but no, Joel's mother came over today and she goes, "Oh my God, he looks like a chocolate coyote." I mean, he is. He's built and acts and has those gold eyes as if he's a wild dog. But I mean, he acts completely tame. He doesn't have the long toes, which tells me he's not coyote or wolf. But people are going to freak out when they see him. And luckily, he's only a 50-pound dog, so he's not one of those 80-pound wolf crosses. But he's unique. After we lost our old guy, and I said, okay, we've got to fill this hole. And sure enough, I look at the Black Hills Humane Society right in Rapid, and I said, oh God, Joe, look at this. I said, this guy he's built like a wolf, even though he's not colored. He's got the chocolate coloring. I said, you and I could take pictures of him, and in the poses that he strikes, I can turn him into a wolf, by just thickening up his hair and making it grizzled like a wolf. And so I go, I can write this guy off because I'll be using him in our artwork. So I check with my accountant. My accountant goes, yeah, that's how it works. It's called a modeling expense. So it's like, well, awesome. So
Perfect.
vet care, feeding, his adoption fee, it all gets put into the uh, model expense bracket. So yeah, that's the thing this week that's been really, making me into a new mother. So with all the turtles and the box turtles, it's yeah, I'm anxious, and when I talk to the herpetologists of game and fish, that setting up when we can release these turtles, and there's a lot of people in our reptile club that want to participate, which is exciting. So
That is.
yeah, I mean I've got at least 7 on the list that, according to their work schedule, they want to participate in rescuing the turtles from the drying ponds. And, Game and Fish would, love us to film that and use it as a human interest, public, feel good story. And the same with releasing the egg rescues from the turtles we find deceased, run over on the road, and catching those eggs and releasing those. So, yeah, it's fun to continue on that, even though I'm retired as a biologist. um, I'm still kind of an ad hoc spokesperson now for South Dakota Game and Fish Heritage Division, the non-sporting hunting species, and I'm really looking forward to networking with the new herpetologist who's been located here to Rapid City. To yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I'm kind of interested to get to hear how dealing with her is, and
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I mean, maybe
Jen
dealing with is the wrong term, but
depends on what you're up to.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it's and Joel and I are going to get that snake pole like I talked on the last issue, because he's getting tired of using his camera tripod to move snakes off the road, and especially when it's the rattlers that curl up and and spit and grab his tripod, rubber feet. He doesn't want to deal with venom. Oh, you've got one. Where'd you get it?
Any pet store.
Oh,
Mm.
really? At a pet store? Okay. I guess
Yeah,
I've never.
super
I
small,
Oh, that's awesome.
but fits in a backpack.
Oh, well, he wants one that's at least 6 feet long.
Yeah, it's not 6 feet. Um,
Yeah,
and for those listening, I just showed a picture of a snake, or I just showed my snake hook, which is like just a little collapsible hook that you pick up at Petco. They're
yeah,
probably 24 inches total. You could handle a 4-foot rattlesnake and be safe with it, I'm pretty sure. So,
yeah, he wants a 6 footer because, yeah. I mean, I've seen 6 feet rattlesnakes out there, and matter of fact, we encountered one on a cattle drive, and it was so big, I thought, and the guy shot it because, we were just he was ahead of the herd, and we were driving the herd, and all of a sudden we hear this shot up ahead, and I go, "Oh god, that doesn't sound good." And when we get up there, he's got this big snake draped up and over this um, fence that was on the pasture that we were driving the cattle by. And these were 110 head of longhorn. And he wanted to kill the snake before it started a stampede. Well, here the snake it was draped up and over this 4-strand barbed wire, touching touching the ground on both sides. And
oh man.
I couldn't believe it. The head, and the guys whose horse I was riding goes, "Don't ride the horse up to inspect that snake." He knew me. He knew I wanted to go inspect that snake. He goes, "That horse will freak out on you." And so, I the guy who had shot it, his horse was an old dead broke thing, and he could go up there, and he said his head was this big, like indicating about 5 inches. And from where I was safely on this green horse, yeah, I mean, I go, "Do you know how much money you could have gotten from that from Reptile Gardens?" I mean, the thing huge.
Yeah.
I had
Well,
never seen a snake like that.
I'm sure most people don't ever think about it, but like the largest bull snake on record is from South Dakota. So
But,
at 8 foot 4 inches or something crazy, like a just
uh,
like just a monster, you know? So
that's hard
eight
to
foot 4 inches is really big for a colubrid
imagine.
native snake, anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So it's fun to go out herping, and so it's not just turtles on the road we encounter that we help across the road or get the eggs off the road. But it's fun to see the snakes and then and encounter some that aren't supposed to be here. They're supposed to
Right,
be down
like
the
you have
street.
in your yard.
Yeah, yeah. And the like, and we encountered this beautiful blue and rust king snake in Wind Cave that isn't supposed to be here. And so, we took pictures of it. Someone had run over it, and and so we shared that with you know, the park and this herp site that reporting on. And I should post that on our Rapid City Reptile group. Anybody sees things like that, to get the GPS and send those pictures to that site of so that they can catalog where the people are seeing species where they're supposed to be and where they're not supposed to be or not expected to be, like that king snake was. It's like, oh gosh, too bad he was run over because he is gorgeous blue. I mean, this the like sky blue, and then with rust circles surrounded by a black, and it's sad. It was only about a 2 inch, or excuse me, a 2 foot snake, and it's just so sad that he wasn't one that we could encounter and meet and hold and take some pictures. Beautiful snake that was lost to us. I don't, and that's why I tell people when you drive through the parks, take your time. Expect
Right.
that there's gonna be snakes on the road basking on the warm roads, and don't drive through as if you're on a Sunday drive and you can't wait to go home and get to dinner.
Right.
Because it's so sad that we encounter so many snakes that are run over in our Custer State Park and Wind Cave National Park and the Badlands. It's Yeah, I don't get it.
Well, for me, I guess there's not too much new. We're still working on coming up with a plan for the reptile collection. So I kind of want to make sure we're focused and we're not just buying things all willy nilly, spending money where we
Yeah,
really shouldn't even be spending money.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah. With that,
yeah, we've got some thoughts there. I've got my list of my top 5 made, so
uh-huh.
probably dive into those species and
And what
yeah.
top 5 are those?
I really like Aspidites overall as the genus, which would be like Woma pythons and blackhead pythons. Um, they're kind of like Australia's king snake. And then so both of those are really on there. The limitations with blackheads is price because you can't really get like one snake for under $1,200.
Ooh,
So yeah, there's a cost. Diamond pythons, another one, same way, big huge cost. $1,000 minimum per snake.
but then when you breed
But
those, then you could get that same for their get, I would
if
assume.
you can breed them and yeah, so on and so forth. I mean, yeah, diamonds are kind of a little more rare in the hobby. I feel they're just not. People aren't producing them. Doesn't seem. Even though they're worked with and like wanted, I don't know why people don't work with them more.
That Yeah, that goes against all marketing sense. If someone wants something, then usually there's a business person who'll say, "Okay, I'll provide it, and I'll make money providing that."
Yeah, I just wonder if they're like a super. They're not like a python. I mean, they are. They're a python, but like Terry Phillips said, you have to shovel snow into their cage in the wintertime. Like, that's kind of what you need to do. So, like, at 45 degrees, no heat, just to 45 degrees, they'll take food.
Where are they from?
Australia, the southern coast of Australia. So it'd be like the northern, like Pennsylvania up to Maine here is
Oh,
where
okay.
they would live. So it'd
Oh,
be similar to that.
oh, so they would get snow there.
Oh, yeah, they get lots of snow.
Wow. I just don't think of snow happening in Australia.
No, no, you don't, do you? Australia is a very big place.
Yeah, yeah. I guess
It,
it is about the size of the United States, the
it's
lower 8.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got rainforest, desert, swampy land, mangroves, everything.
Yeah, I guess I would never move there because of the killer spiders and killer snakes.
It's not really the snakes I'd worry about. I'd be more worried in like Africa or or like India,
Yeah.
the Middle East and Africa. That's where
Are
I'd
they
be worried about snakes.
they're the two-step snakes, as they call it. You get bit and you walk steps and then drop dead.
That and there's not a lot of anti-venom for them. Like at
Oh,
least in like Australia, you got some anti-venom. I mean, for most of the things you're gonna get bit by anyway. If you were to get bit, there's not any like I don't know. I just feel like it's African and Asian cobras just seem far worse. Black mambas,
oh,
green mambas, Jacobson mambas, yeah, the two-step snakes. I mean, sure, in inland taipan, if it bites you, yeah, you probably do have two steps, but the likelihood that that snake is going to bite you is slim to none because you're not going to run into it. It lives out in the middle of nowhere where people aren't. So,
have you ever watched the show Wild Safari Live, where it's being beamed directly from Juma Game Preserve, and they also have another crew up in the Masai Mara, where they have these big migrations. Well, they show these black mambas, and that all of a sudden uh, chase some of I mean, they chase the humans. It's like, oh my god, and they that's their defense is intimidation. It's like, well, yeah, huge snake. All of a sudden, the guide is getting out to show to show you this tortoise, leopard tortoise crossing the road. Then all of a sudden, he didn't realize how close the jeep came to this, big, huge black snake, and the snake becomes aggressive, and instead of it just, curling up and then you back away, no, it starts to come at you. I mean, and this thing looked like it was 7, 8 feet long. It's like, get in the jeep. And this is all live, and some of the guy, it's really interesting. And I mean, so they're out beaming this from uh you know parts of Africa live as you're watching this. And so it's really interesting. I mean, you really, and a lot of these people are professional game guides, or not for hunting, but for taking tourists to for photography. And then they also are biologists, and so some of them that have had some really harrowing encounters. They're just like, I just survived this, and they're shaky and everything. I said, we're all like, ah, all around the world watching their huge, snake encounters. But then they come across, the tiniest tortoise in the world down there in South Africa, and it looks like a miniature leopard tortoise. And I didn't know. I learned on that show that they had giant leopard tortoises that about 3 feet large, and then
dang.
the one that yeah, I mean, I didn't know they got that big. And then the ones that you normally think the biggest are like 18 inches, or but it's really a fun
That's
show.
that's a good sized tortoise.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, the kind that you like,
Yeah, well,
the
if you're
giant
gonna
one.
get a tortoise, you gotta get a tortoise, you know? Like,
Well, not the ones that can break through a door.
I
Yeah,
need to be like every good reptile breeder ever and buy a whole bunch of sulcata tortoises and let them free range in my backyard and try to produce some. That's what every good reptile breeder has done. Don't do that. I'm not condoning that. But Alan said he did it, so it was a failure, but he did it.
Well, from what I've seen about the cicadas, I said, "Oh my gosh." I mean, you really need to have, like, a zoo enclosure because they will dig, those huge trenches as if you're laying in a culvert under a road, and some, like, will break through standard, what do you call that? The drywall, or those, cheap hollow, doors, that just oh, yeah, crash. I'll stay with the small, well, just talking about this, those 2 little box turtles don't seem so, you know, a handful. But
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. So,
So you
I
mentioned 2 of the snakes. What other 3, species are you
oh,
thinking?
um, see, this is where it's gonna take a slight turn. Well, hang on. I've went both of Aspidites. What else did I say?
The blackhead.
Diamonds. Let's just yeah, blackheads, womas, diamonds. Let's just classify diamonds into carpet pythons in general. That's a whole genus. We'll just yeah. We'll just group that whole group of snakes together. It's fine. There's a whole book about them. Uh, um, and then a part of me like wants to, and I'm probably gonna get shamed for saying this by somebody, but a part of me really wants to get like 6 or 8 import Amazon tree boas, like imported from the wild juveniles, and then start my own, establish my own line of Amazon tree boas essentially from wild stock. I know there's
Okay.
people doing captive breeding, and maybe I should get an Amazon tree boa that's captive bred first. But I
And
do
what
like I like the idea. Like this is why I have my bull snakes, right? I like the idea of knowing where they came from.
huh,
Like I like the idea of having the lineage. So like any of my animals, like the bull snakes specifically, b- up until they were hatched, it was a wild caught mom. We have a picture of that snake. Other than that, we know where she was wild caught from, which is a really cool thing. And that's just information you don't usually get when you're buying something, and it's something that I kind of find very interesting. So it'd be nice to have all of the lineage on all of my animals, and it's easy to have all the lineage of all your animals when they have came from the wild.
huh.
And I'm
Well,
not saying that establish go for it. What's your question?
my question was, I see, I have not studied snakes. What parasites and illnesses do you have to worry about with wild caught snakes?
So they're definitely going to have a parasite load when they come in. Like every wild animal has a parasite load. The captive hatched bull snakes that I have, I'm not worried about that. They were captive hatched in an environment where, like, yeah, in somebody's garage,
Hmm.
in an incubator. They're fine. They don't have a parasite load. But
Hmm.
something from the wild, you just take you take a stool sample in to your vet or send it off, and they'll tell you what's in there and if it needs treatment or not, and you go from there. There are two there are two other viruses that are very well known, and one is very prevalent even in captive things. And I think it all comes from like the mingling of at the importer's place. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we have ball pythons and tree boas, and we just got all these shipments in, and now all these animals are here. But like, there's nidovirus in snakes, and that'll just kill them essentially. They can fight it for a while, but it will eventually kill them. Cryptosporidium, that Nido is like a respiratory thing. Crypto is like an internal. The only way to detect it's in the feces. Um, and like Nido can only be detected when it's active sometimes. So like you can have animals test negative, and then 4 months later it tests positive. And like so that's really those Nido is very prevalent in like green tree pythons. I don't know if you've ever heard of like the green tree pythons and the emerald tree boas coming up and them just dying all the time. Like them not being able to be established, and this could have been a reason why, along with keeping them at 100 degrees and 100% humidity. That's just not how you keep those.
Interesting. Yeah, I would be afraid of the risk. I think that's why, with my little turtle collection, I've always bought captive bred. And the just dealing with these, wild box turtles, the female let loose a tapeworm that I'm pretty sure she caught from eating a nest of pinkies out there in the wild. you know, pinky mice. And it's like ew. And so I talked to the vet about warming her, and he wanted to get her up to a certain level of health before we did that. And she hasn't passed any since, but you know,
Well, if I'm gonna take the risk, that's so like I understand the risk too, and that's a part of it. But if I'm gonna take the risk, I need to do it while I don't have a collection.
yeah,
I mean, I
really.
do have a collection now, but like really, I don't really have a snake collection. I've got a few snakes, but it's not like I got 40 or 50 of them, and now I'm gonna bring in a wild caught. So if there is a time to bring it in, it would be now, or I when I have it my own, it can have its own space, like its own room away from the other snakes. But I've listened to a lot of people go over like how they do imports and people who've had good success with it. And I don't know, it's a challenge, and I think it's because like you're getting the animal in such bad condition, it's dehydrated, it's not okay, you know. So you have to nurse it back to health. So even if it does have parasites in it, you're not going to want to treat it right away because it's not going to be like its immune system's weak. It's, you know, so there's a whole process to it. And I think it'd be very interesting to go through that.
Yeah, I would think you'd have to have a quarantine room for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure on that. And then it'd be a year or two. And then with the boas and stuff, it's like emerald tree boas drop dead from the same stuff that the green trees were. So does that go into Amazons too, or Amazon's more hardy? I don't really have the answer to that. I still need to do more research, but
We have to watch more podcasts.
yeah, I do. Kenyan sand boas is another one that might be on the list. I like them because they're small.
How small?
Males are under 2 feet, under 20 inches, like maybe 18 max. Females can get 3 feet, but maybe two and a half, 30 inches max.
Wow.
So they're super small. Uh, like my juvenile ball python enclosures that you've seen. It's just a 15 quart bin, but that is big enough for a male for its whole life.
Wow. Wow.
Like the male would have more than enough room to lay down one side. Like it's plenty big. So yeah, that's I really like the small stuff too because it doesn't take space and you can have a lot of it. Like I could have 15 or 20 of them, and it's not as much as 15 or 20 carpet pythons at 6 feet, you know? So I
Huh.
don't know. Still working on the other two, but I do want to find something small. I like the small stuff. I think I'm going to go with Kenyans. Um, but what I'd like to do with that is like, I think it'd be nice to be able to buy like 10 or 15. of each one that I want because there's different morphs. So now we're playing the morph chase game, you know. Um, like buy 10 or 15 of each one and then sell off the ones that I don't want, if that makes sense. So like I'd get a deal on 10 or 15 and then I could go through all of them. I could pick out 3 females and 1 male that look really good, that are the best looking ones, and then send the rest out the door. So I've thought about doing that just to be super picky about it. At least then I'd have more choices, I guess.
So do you get to look at the individuals that you're buying, or you just have to order, I want this type of snake, send me 15? They don't allow you to
It,
see exactly
it,
which individuals you're buying.
it depends. If you're getting like from a breeder who's, you know, some guy who's breeding snakes in his basement, they'll typically send you as many pictures as you ask for. It's actually the number one most complained about thing from snake breeders is everyone wants too many pictures. Um,
How are they when they buy something? Don't I mean, especially since they're breeders, don't they
I
wanna know they're going
I
to
don't
breed?
know. I feel like with the ball python, like the morph game, the morph chasing. Let's just call it what it is. It's the morph chasing game. It doesn't matter because it's about the genetics in the thing. So like it doesn't matter what your lesser ghost, pinstripe, zebra, pin blast, whatever looks like. It's got these genes. I want that animal. You know, that's all that matters. It's not so yeah, the morph, it's that morph chasing. It's that's about the genes. It's not about the animal
Huh.
at some point.
Well, I would say it's about the animal because of how are those genes expressed? Is it expressed minimally? Is
Well,
it
like a but
maximum?
but a breeder who's looking, let's say, for a 6 gene animal male to plug into to their females who might have only 2 genes, and they just want a stunner male to, you know, a really expensive male because it's got 5 genes in it. They don't care what it looks like. They're just going after those genes so they can put those genes in to their projects to make what they want. It doesn't
Gotcha.
mean that the snake's not cool looking, because the snake is probably cool looking too, but yeah, and the likelihood of you finding that certain 6 or 5 gene animal that you want, you're going to find the one you want, and that's about it, you know? It's not like 6 gene animals are just a plenty floating around or anything.
Well, do most breeders then want to go to reptile expos, or are they content with just ordering essentially, online and having it shipped to them? Like,
I
what do they really prefer?
I don't know for the my experience is going to be through the lens of listening to people talk on podcasts. Um, so there's some people who like that's all they do is the shows. And that's how they make all their money is the shows. And like without the shows, they wouldn't be able to do it anyway in the way that they do it at all. Like and then there's other people who only go online. So it's really kind of person dependent. And I think most of the bigger names go to the shows and it's a time for them to meet with their friends and hang out and reminisce with their buddies, you know, because they all know each other, you know, they're friends. They come to this expo every year and meet up with their buddies, have some beers, and talk about their reptiles, you know. So
I know. Um, I was just wondering, like, this is how they like to sell. How do they like to buy? Is I guess
I guess it goes both ways because you know they people didn't like to buy online, Morph Market wouldn't be there, and if people didn't like the shows wouldn't be around anymore. So I think the access to be able to buy things online, because it used to only be you go to the show, right? And then you had to know a guy or two or whatever to get more things because they didn't have, you know, you remember back when there was no internet, Peggy? You're pre internet.
Yeah, it's for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
am barely not pre-internet, but I remember a time, barely.
yeah, it's our intergenerational podcast here.
Heck
I was
yeah.
grade school in the '60s, folks, and so, yeah, if, well, I don't think I ever bought a snake, I just caught a whole heck of a lot of them. Uh,
Well, we should change that, Peggy.
Joe would say, "No." Right,
Really?
right.
The
Well
bird guy doesn't want a snake. That's kinda
when I met him, he had 3 snakes. Well, he and his mom, they're both really into snakes, and, I was surprised he didn't wanna, bring him, here, but oh, yeah, I think his mom would have been upset being without the snakes. But then they both ended up selling them, so, um, like, I guess, Joel, when he moved, in with me, it was, uh, getting to know all the horses and horse training and horse breeding and, that sort of thing, and I was really, down on, uh no, at the time, I don't think I had turtles. I think I had sold all my turtles, and, when I got that huge sculpture commission, and then so I just had the horses and the dogs, and then when I sold the horses, I had empty nest syndrome, and I had to get back into turtles. So, yeah.
So, oh man. Do you think you could dig a hole in your yard and then do, like, some sort of fencing or wood, fill said hole back in, and then put the turtles in that, and maybe even put pipe down at the bottom. You know what I mean? Like make an already dugout for them so they don't have to have a dugout that's underground and just leave them outside.
You talking about the box turtles?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, the one one's completely, totally blind. Uh,
Okay.
and the other and he'll never have it, a bacterium totally had eaten his eyes away,
Yeah.
which is sad. And so I don't know if he'd be able to find that tunnel. Well,
You could
I'm sure.
probably just take them out of there and put them in the fridge.
Yeah,
Like brumate him, you know. I know
and
like put them in the fridge sounds bad, but that's
I
what you do. I mean, like 45, 50 degrees, that's all it
yeah,
needs.
and I'm actually sadly thinking the female. She was the one run over by the car, and she can, you know, when out in the yard and when I put her in the grass, she actually uses all four of her feet. Now inside, she'll oscillate between just pulling herself forward with her front or not use her front and then just pushing herself forward with her hind. It's like I think she had brain damage, because her jaw was broken, and I there's something not connected there. And yet she enjoys eating. She eats like a baby bird, so she's not giving up. But I just don't know how far how long do I let her try to get a life back, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you were discussing that with Mike. I
Yeah,
remember back on
and
that episode.
yeah, and
How
so
has
I
it progressed? Has it gotten any better since then or
well, not at all, and so I'm gonna give her one more season, and I think Samson, the male, may, put them together, see if there's an interaction that will spur her, into more activity. Because it did when I first got him. She started using all of her legs, to get away from him, you know? No, he wasn't mounting her or anything. He was just, sniffing her, and I think she was more, aged and could tell like, oh, I don't want anything of this right now. And so every now and then I put them together to, just so that she gets stimulated more. Um, and but she just usually sits. I have to pick her up, put her in her water, you know, count an hour, take her out, then feed her, put her back in the water to clean her, put her under her heat lamp. I mean, she doesn't move around enough to even regulate her temperature or regulate her water intake. And it's like, I don't know what kind of quality of life she could be other than, could she produce eggs? Could she,
Yeah.
have enough interior muscle structure to release those eggs, and get babies out of her because, these turtles are becoming more rare here in South Dakota. What
Mhm.
but then I feel like I'm doing that, not for her,
Yeah,
possibly.
no, I feel like that's almost worse for her. She's
Yeah,
clearly not in
exactly.
a
So,
condition to do that, you know?
yeah, and, I've had to euthanize some turtles that people brought to me that were injured beyond, you could tell that their main organs were gone, and so, I put them in our deep freezer, and, that way, put them out of their misery, and we'll see what this spring brings, and I'll in summer and see what I need to do about her. But, the Game and Fish had sent me another email and, really interested in setting up an assurance colony for the box turtle.
So, yeah, so couldn't we just dig a hole in your yard? Like, back to the keeping of the box turtles in your yard, Peggy. Um,
Well,
uh,
we could make that a project, and with healthy box turtles,
yes, no,
um,
don't breed the bad ones.
right, yeah,
Nothing
with
nothing on the bad turtles. They're
uh,
just
yeah,
you
well,
kinda probably want the best looking, the healthiest stock for
and
this
Sam's
project.
the blind one. He is really handsome. He's got a bright green head and, and a beautiful carapace of black and golds, and he runs around the house like he owns the place. He is a fun turtle to have around. I just wouldn't trust. Um, and I'll have to do some. I'll have to sample the ants that we have that are so aggressive. Um, uh, would the turtles be safe hibernating, you know, in our yard with those types of ants because they could just eat them alive in the winter, and that's been known to happen. And so I'll have to take a sampling of the ants, um, because we've got at least 7 species that show themselves to can't have ant wars, and then they really latch on to. I had to save one of my cats and just hose her down from an attack from ants.
Dang,
And yeah, I mean these are
that's crazy, actually.
these, these half-inch big red and black ants that build 3-foot mounds. It's like where'd they come from? Africa, And so I borrowed my neighbor's chickens, which decimated those ants. It was really great. I mean, they just tore into them and ate them, and and they've gotten rid of those nests. But I would I'd like for them to be outside, but I can't monitor them underground, to find what those ants would be doing to them.
So, maybe we could just pull them out in the wintertime and fridge them,
Yeah,
and
I
then,
yeah.
you know
Yeah, have a great, spring, summer, fall habitat, and then, early fall depends. Yeah, we don't have one of those September 5th blizzards. No, it was September 7th. It was last year, I think. But yeah, we've got one habitat nearly completed that's 8 foot by 8 foot, and we're going to put um, uh, the shade is provided from this garden, what do you call it, raised garden bed with shade underneath and the water underneath there, and there's going to be a door so that raccoons can't get into the box and raccoons, and so it's going to be our garden along the walls and then on this raised bed, and then the box turtles can um, exist underneath. And then we're going to do the same for the aquatic turtles. Build a habitat similar like that with 4x4 upward posts and half-inch woven wire. And like that one's going to be, see, what did we measure that out to be? 16 by 22. Because we want to have a pond in there that you're going to help me build, and and have a shallow end for the box turtles, and then have that fenced off, and then the deeper end for the aquatic turtles. That's our, and then again have that with um, raised flower beds and flower or not flower beds, garden beds for growing vegetables, and the same with making walled vegetable growing things. So it becomes something that we can keep our cats and the neighborhood cats away from putting their doo-doos in our food, digging, we and it's suspended above the turtles, so just pull off the greens, throw it down to the box turtles, and then take the rest in. So we got a lot of plans to house the creatures, you know, larger, better, bigger, and then also grow food for ourselves and protect it from the birds and the cats.
Well, yeah. Because if you could keep them outside and then get them a nice little mini fridge that you can set to 50 degrees or 45 or whatever, you
And I
know,
have, yeah,
yeah, then they shouldn't really be too hard, you know? They should
and
be fairly easy.
yeah, I should do that. It's um, Samson's well enough, according to the vet, that he would take a fridge cremation really well, but not Boxy, the one that was hit by the car. She has to
Yeah.
be monitored daily. Just
Well, no, if you're picking her up to feed her and picking her up to, yeah, I
yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah. She's. I just don't think. I think there was a lot of more organ damage than that we real. We don't know the extent um, completely of damaged kidneys or lung damage or anything from that car strike. But, I've had her X-rayed, and you can't really, unless you do an MRI, and I'm not paying for a turtle MRI,
Yeah.
to find out if there's any organ damage that we don't know about. So
Yeah, if I had the space to keep them inside and I could do a big, huge table, I wouldn't mind, but
yeah,
I'm
well,
not
Sam,
there yet.
you could have Samson because he's only in an 18 by 24 tub, like you keep your snakes, and then like tomorrow's feeding day, and then I take him out and let him run around the house with the new dog, who's very prey oriented. I uh,
That's gonna
have
be interesting.
Yeah, he's gonna go out in the yard with our 6-foot fence, and then Samson can have his run in the house. But um, yeah, because the older dog, he just like whatever. Even when Samson comes and lays beside her, he's curls up in all that white fluff of the Spitz hair. She just like, and she looks at him and then he lays down and lets him sleep there. But this little brown coyote, I have a feeling he'll think that that's lunch. So yeah, I have to really watch him in the turtle room, and so far he hasn't showed interest. He cocked his head when he was watching Samson move about in his tub, where he's got a little what do you call those uh, bass water dishes where the turtles can crawl up and then crawl down into the water. And he was watching Samson do that, and then he'd come back out and go to his feeding dish, and then there's a little around the corner is his little cave, and he's quite content in that little place. And then when he starts getting antsy, I know it's time to take him out and let him roam the house. It's amazing how, I mean, he seems like he's completely brave, and there and he's got to have radar or something, because, or maybe see light and dark. I wave my finger by his eye and he doesn't respond, but then I touch his leg and he goes, "Oh, you're there," So I can't figure out how when he's running around the house, why he doesn't run into anything. It's like, yeah, he's amazing, but yeah, I'm just not used to having this many rescues at one time, and so yeah, and so I'm a little over turtled.
So after last week's episode and talking about like the bigger monitors and how they think. Do you? We didn't ask Bill, but do you think that turtles have a little bit more going on upstairs than? I
Uh,
mean,
I know one of my painted turtles does. Um, he um, he figures things out faster. He knows that, and he's more brave. And so, you know, uh, I've made um, covers for their ponds out there where the raccoons or fox couldn't get at them, but the snakes do make it in. And one of my friends was saying that one snake wrapped around her goldfish and killed it, even though the goldfish seemed way too big for this baby snake to. I'm like, oh, geez, that could. Now that we've got lots of snakes out in our yard, that could happen with my small turtles. Could the snake hold the turtle underwater while its head is above water? Who knows? But this turtle, the brilliant one, he he sees a snake and he goes, "Oh no, no, not you are not going to get by with invading us," and just goes and attacks. And I think the snake was in there wanting to hunt his smaller runted buddy that has never grown more than 3 inches. He was a 2018 baby, and he grew to 3 inches and just stopped. This little midland turtle. I think he'd be a good pet for somebody. and
maybe we should open a pet shop, actually.
Yeah. Well, so the one that's really smart, I just put my hand in the water, he'll swim right into my palm, and look at me, and I can feed him a tidbit of food. He'll back up out of, and I've got my palm halfway, in the water. He'll swallow, and then he'll come up onto my wrist and beg for more. No other painted turtle is that bold and knows, and but he's learned that. I've tried to show it to the others, and they're just like, "Oh, we're just gonna nip your fingers." But he knows exactly. Yeah, I've shown. I trained him how to do that, and the others just will not learn how to do that. But I was in the National Enquirer. That's what Al brought up. He goes,
Yeah, yeah. You're talking about Sheldon.
"Yeah,
You're,
yeah, yeah," and
yeah.
that was
I
Jimmy.
remember that conversation.
That was Jimmy that I had for 10 years. That I trained him to stand up and bang on his hind legs and roll over. And he was another spark of a painted turtle. And now I have, this guy who is that way. And yeah, this one that I have now, the brainiac one, is, Dr. Sheldon Cooper. And then his little miniature friend, is Dr. Leonard Hofstadter. and the real brilliant one, yeah, is the one that just you can teach him, target train him. It's just, you know, he's really unique. And so maybe yeah, I got to get a hold of National Enquirer. Like, remember back in 80, what was that? 89? No, 79. Back in 79, when you ran that article on me on my pit turtles.
I'm sure it's all the same people working there.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm yeah. I will have to take pictures of that and put it on Instagram of that that National Enquirer article of me, the turtle trainer. That was pretty fun. But and then to have David, look what we have here, Mike. Hello.
Hello.
Awesome, dude.
I am so sorry.
I
I've had to.
just saw your message. I thought that was gonna be more of a, I can't make it tonight. Don't worry about it, dude. We're in the middle of recording. We'll just do a one-on-one. It's okay.
My bad. Well, I'm here now, so I'm
Yeah.
happy to come back another time if you guys want to make up for this
Hey,
one. But
you're here.
I am
You're
here
here.
now, so
If
yes.
I and you, yeah. I
We're hoping you didn't have a reptile or amphibian emergency that needed tending.
No, not directly. Just life stuff and work and all the good stuff of real life, not reptile life.
And I was
fair enough.
watching your YouTube video of feeding your 100 animals, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yes, it is
And
a large undertaking.
well, uh,
Well, and then filming it on top of it has to be even well, because you do like your reptile rooms who are like every month almost.
Yeah, I tried to do it most months. Some months, I mean, like now with the trip to Madagascar and then coming back and started a new job, so it was
ooh,
pretty hectic. But yeah, other than that, it worked out. So
how long were you in Madagascar?
we were there for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Oh,
And
nice.
did you? I saw how you were really focusing on the chameleons. Are you going to um, focus on other species too?
Yeah, so that was just kind of like a quick need to get it done, uh, get a video out type video.
Mhm.
But the next video that I have coming is like I spent probably 5 or 6 hours alone just on the introduction of the video. So it's been
Wow.
it'll be a much more well-rounded video, I guess, and it's more of like a story than it is just like a hey, there's this chameleon and this chameleon and this chameleon. It's more of a full story of the whole, not the whole trip, but it'll be a good portion of the probably the first half or so of the trip.
That's
Cool.
really cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Well,
a blast.
I bet
well,
that this comes out in 10 days. I release on Wednesday and I give myself 10 days. So I'm sure that'll be out or
Yes,
close to it.
yeah, it better be out.
Yeah. So I know you were saying on your live that you were s- worried about like switching styles or approaches in your video. Uh, so is that more based on like the the story of the trip versus what you usually do? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of I kind of was in and out of that a little bit.
yeah, it was. It's more so just the issue of a lot of people don't really care, I guess. Like as many people as there are that are kind of invested in it and there to see the trip and there is definitely those people, but just, the vast majority of the reptile room tour or the feeding videos or whatever don't really care. Like they're there more for entertainment than either education or uh, a travel journey, I suppose. That's what I like to watch. Like I really don't watch much animal YouTube at all. I might watch Dion Adams videos, and that's pretty much it. Every now and then, like I'll watch a Brian Barczyk video or something like that. But beyond that, there's really not much that I watch. So um, making a different style is definitely it's more like in tune with me. Like I enjoy the art of making a video and I enjoy watching a video even on Dion and Adam's channel, like with their videos from Madagascar. They've definitely put a lot more editing and focus into it than in past videos, especially Adam's channel or Adam's video that he posted. And to me, like I noticed a little sound effects or whatever's going on in the background. Like maybe not everybody does, but I know that all that stuff is put in, like a drone shot. There's no sound with. So any sound associated with the drone, water, rudder blades, like whatever's going on is all edited in. So that's kind of the beauty to me at least.
well, let's. I'd like to have you introduce yourself. Like
Yeah.
who you are, what you do, what got you into the reptile hobby, and how it has, benefited you. And let's hear about yourself.
Kind of
Yeah,
got
for
right
sure.
to the questions.
Yeah, sorry. Again, I apologize for being late. I was dealing with this and I was like, was there something I was supposed to do today? I can't
No.
remember because I had a crazy day at work and I just got home, was just dead tired. And then I looked at my phone and there was the message like, hey, here's the link. I was like, oh no, that was today. I thought that was next week. Anyways, yes, myself. My name is Mike Tytula, Alpha Reptile on YouTube, Instagram. Um, and my name's Mike. I've been into reptiles since I was about 8 years old. So coming on 2 decades here. And I've had them since the age of 8. I could pronounce every dinosaur, but at the age of like 2 or 3, better than even my parents could. And now don't quiz me because nope. Uh, but at the time, yeah. And yeah, I've just been basically following the passion of reptiles my whole life. I got a bachelor's of science in biology. I have done working in the world's second largest pet store. I worked there for about six years. Um,
What's that one?
it's called Pisces Pet Emporium. I do I do have a video on my channel kind of highlighting the store and sharing it off. And they have like marmosets. They have a massive 30-foot tall kind of waterfall in the store.
Where's that at?
Yeah.
It's in Calgary, Alberta.
Just
Wow.
north of here, Peggy.
Yeah. Where are you guys?
We're in the Black Hills in South Dakota. So
Okay, so yeah, it'd be northwest. Yeah.
yeah, and a little west, but
Yeah.
Not,
I've got
not too
clients
far.
in Calgary. They've got a great bronze foundry in Calgary. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'll
Yeah.
have to
well,
look and go on. That sounds great.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I worked there for 6 years, all throughout my university degree. I then graduated university, went on a couple trips with some friends, went to Toledo, Ohio to go see like the behind the scenes tour of their aquarium or their zoo there. I went to Troy Goldberg's house, a fellow dart frogger. I went to Phoenix and I went to Costa Rica. So that was one heck of a summer. I have yet to top a summer like that, and it wasn't even that long. I think that was all in the span of like a month and a half or something.
Holy cow.
And then after that, pandemic hit, and I started dating my girlfriend Bree, and eventually ended up moving out here to Ontario. I have been here ever since, and that's kind of where we were able to put all of our efforts and stuff into the reptile room that we have now. We have probably I don't even know how many animals at this point. No babies, so the numbers aren't like as high as they can get, but um yeah, we're pretty much sold out of offspring to sell, but in general it's been good.
So is your new job reptile or animal related?
Um, Kinda, not really. No, it is animal related, but it's not reptile related directly. At least, I basically work for a company that makes various different tracking devices, essentially for many different animals, anywhere from like a butterfly all the way to like lions and cheetahs. So I work in the freshwater department as well as the marine. So I deal with a lot of like dolphins, not hands on, but like dealing with customers that are researching dolphins, seals, fish. There's been a few frog species, and I just started like 2 weeks ago, so that's about it.
So the tracking devices, for biologists to do research, that sort of thing.
Yes, correct. Yeah, they log various different things, whether it's just literally like a GPS location, or they also have like a light calculated. So basically, whenever the light is hitting the tracker, it shows through an algorithm where they are in the world.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So, like, you've been on YouTube for a really, really long time.
Yes, a very long time.
Yes. I found you probably when you had like 1K subs at
Nice.
some point in there.
Holy.
So, yeah, maybe 3, I don't know. Somewhere in there. You said I sound familiar. I do have 2 YouTube videos.
Okay.
Under Black Hills Reptile,
Right.
and you may have seen those because those came out about the same time you were starting your channel. So I was gonna do YouTube about the same time you were, and then I didn't, and you did. So kind of interesting to see the difference. We still
Yeah.
both have day jobs, so
Yep. Yep. We will still do.
um. So are yeah, you are. You're getting back into dart frogs. You got a big, huge order. Um. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me,
That was a
are dart frogs
dart.
your favorite or of all the animals that you
Um,
have?
I like their enclosures the best. Like they're the most fun for me because I'm truly like a really big plant nerd and orchid enthusiast, and I just love like the jungle. So to me, they are like a perfect pet that I can make a really cool enclosure and then just toss a couple tiny frogs in there, and they love it and enjoy it. Um, yeah, in that sense, they're probably my favorite. Obviously, they're not really that social or interactable. So, in the kind of social sense of the reptile keeping and like connection, I suppose, if you want to call it, with your animals, they're pretty much at the bottom of the list. But in general, I love them. Like the beautiful colors, the various, I mean, basically whatever you can think of, that color exists and you can get it. So yeah, for various prices, obviously, but
Do you find that like they're once you get them set up kind of animal, they're good to go, kind of like a green tree. It's hard to dial in, but once it's dialed in, it's good to go. Or are they just overall a little like how is keeping them? More
um,
of the question.
I would say pretty easy unless you have like a really warm home. Then I would argue that they're one of the easier species, especially if you're looking to do more of like a naturalistic or bioactive setup. I would argue if you're trying to just set up a sterile enclosure for them, like why bother? Like
Yeah.
the whole picture of the enclosure really is part of keeping them, and I think that's really what makes it special. So why are you just throwing this little frog into a 10-gallon tank on paper towel permanently if you're not breeding them? Like I know there's some people that do that with tree frogs and whatnot, and it seems to work very well. So to each their own, but in my case of dart frogs, yeah, you gotta have the nice enclosure, and once you get that dialed in, like room temps, some lights on top, some cool plants, and you're good to go.
Wow. Now, do different species of the dart frogs breed more readily, and you know, and than others?
Yes, yes, very much so. So there's various different genuses within the kind of dart frog family. The Phyllobates, like the massive ones that you see, the Phyllobates terribilis, they tend to have larger clutch sizes and tend to have more offspring than a lot of the other ones. Probably the least fecundant or like producing of the dart frogs are the Ufaga genus. So basically, the ones that feed their tadpoles eggs are pretty slow. Like you might get 3 to maybe 10 on a good year from a pair of those. Like 10 would be a lot, especially for like the large obligates, so the large Ufaga species. There's some smaller ones that tend to be a little bit more reproductive, but in general, they definitely are much less. Whereas, like the Phyllobates that I mentioned, you could have 40 eggs in one clutch. Yeah.
Now,
Wow.
they feed their tadpoles eggs. Could you expound on that?
Yeah, so the Ufaga, the large obligates, or the obligate egg eaters, like Ufaga means egg eating in Latin or Greek or one of the languages that is not spoken anymore. Um, and it basically involves the female laying a clutch of eggs, the male fertilizing it. Once the tadpoles develop, both sexes, typically the male, but there's been recordings of both sexes will transport those tadpoles to a water pool, typically in either a bromeliad or some species do it in like heliconia, and that's where they basically raise them. So then every day to every few days, the female will come by and lay X amount of infertile eggs in with the tadpole. The tadpole will consume those and grow into a frog.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
that's a
Yeah.
lot more
I
brain power than I expected to need at this hour.
Well, thank you for providing that.
Yeah, no
yeah,
problem.
yeah. I've not studied frogs, even our local frogs. And one thing in talking with you froggers, as you called yourself, is I had no idea that they can live as long as they do. Um,
Yep.
I was thinking, 3, 4 years, but yeah, yeah. I mean, does the age um, that they can live to vary also in the species of dart frogs?
Yeah. Like, truthfully, I don't think there's a lot of species in the hobby. As our care evolves, their life expectancy just kind of slowly creeps higher and higher. I think that is mostly true for dart frogs as well. Like Ranatomea, the small kind of thumbnail genus, are typically in and around like the 10-year mark, somewhere around there. But I'm pretty sure one of the oldest breeding pairs of the Dendrobates tinctorius, like the kind of more common ones that you see, um, is like 24 and still breeding, from what I
Holy
know.
cow.
Yeah, so I don't know how accurate that is. I might have just pulled that out from nowhere, but I'm pretty sure I heard some of my friends and reputable frog people talking about a number in the 20s for sure.
Yeah, I've heard that on another podcast, and I went, "What?"
Yeah.
I would never guess that. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, even me, I first got into like researching them, and you hear about you're like, I want a dart frog. And you're like, wait, what is a tinctorius and a bumblebee? And they're all the same. And then you go down that road, and yeah, hearing people talk about their life expectancy, I was like, wait, these aren't like a 5 to 10 year pet. These are like a lifetime commitment almost.
Yeah, yeah.
So do they cycle or do they just constantly go and produce?
Ideally, they cycle, but yes, there are definitely some people. If you're keeping them kind of with like an automatic mister or whatever, where it doesn't change yearly, then a lot of times they just continually produce. Um, Especially with dart frogs, they tend to be on the better side of kind of regulating that, in that they will stop for a couple months here and there, regardless if you change anything. But getting them started again can be troublesome if there's not like a climactic shift. Um, like here, and I imagine where you guys are too, it gets fairly cold in the wintertime. So even if your house drops, a couple degrees at nighttime, sometimes that's enough to kind of trigger them. Or a lot of people will also not stop misting, but maybe mist once or twice a week instead of once or twice a day. So that's kind of the
Um,
climactic shifts that they go through.
Okay.
So
Um,
now with your reptile room, I noticed you had lizards and snakes and the frogs in there too. Um, so you're controlling their cycling in each of your habitats, or do you have like a you set up your habitats to be climatic? Like here's the ones that will all cycle at this time, even though they're of different species. You know, um, how are you organizing that?
Typically, we temperature sex or temperature cycle them, I guess. And at the winter time, we also light cycle them. So we have, during summer, the lights are typically on for 12 to 14 hours a day. And then during the winter time, this year we dropped it back to 8 hours a day, uh, or maybe even 10. Hold on, let me think. No, 8 hours a day. And then we're slowly ramping it back up now. Last year, I think we even went down to like 6 hours a day. But just because of our work schedule and stuff, it's weird to do that now. But I think depending on how this year goes, we'll see which light schedule, I guess, worked better, and we'll go from there. And then the other one is the temperature, as I mentioned, and it typically hits, oh man, I don't, like low 60s, I guess, on the bottom shelf of the racks. So we keep the animals that typically need to drop a little bit lower down there. And then this year, in some cases, we actually, like the turtles, the Geomitis spangleri that I have, as well as the hog noses, we literally put them in bins and put them out right next to a window where it hits like 52, 50 degrees, somewhere around there. Um, and yeah, hopefully that works out. I would love to have some baby turtles this year.
So
that
now,
would be cool.
um, with the turtles, how long do you leave them at 50 some degrees?
Like 3 months.
3 months.
So are you doing then your standard Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day, or?
Kind of. We and miscommunication between my partner and I, we basically stopped feeding them around like mid October, late October, and then put them down to much cooler temperatures kind of end of December. So they had a very gradual slope downwards. And then now they've been sitting at the 51 ish, 51 to 53, depending on how cold it is outside. Um, Temperatures for just after I left Madagascar. So like literally the day after I left. Uh, so almost 2 months now. And that will be pretty much the time. Like around the end of this month is when I'll just pull them out. We occasionally, like every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we go through and just take some weights, make sure they're hydrated, do a health check, look at them, that kind of deal, and everybody's still good.
Well,
Yeah.
do you ever feel over animaled? I mean, where
Uh
it's so
Recently, yes. Not like we're typically pretty in tune. Like being two of us, my girlfriend and I having one room, it does help that there's two. Obviously, if I was myself, there's no way I'd have all the snakes and stuff. Like I would probably have my few snakes that I have and not too many more. But because Bree is the big hognose addict of the family, she loves the hogs and that's what we breed primarily. So it works out that way. But yes, like especially since working full time, doing the YouTube, running the reptile room downstairs, it doesn't leave much time left in the day to really, I guess, detach, especially when it's a social media type gig. You're out doing podcasts or on Zoom calls or whatever you might be doing, and it doesn't leave too much time left in the day.
Yeah.
yeah. I yeah, we were just talking earlier before you came on that I'm easily um, overrun with animals because people bring me injured animals and mostly the turtles and the snakes and things and I don't plan on them. They just all of a sudden wham, they're there, especially when the during the egg laying season, the snakes and turtles are on the road, and I just didn't know if like when I see people like you that are really really deeply involved in this, it's like there has to be a time when they will say like, oh, I got to do this, before I can start shutting down for the day, and it's kind of overwhelming at times.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I don't ever find myself really hating it, but it's just the issue of oh, I really should build this tank. But for somebody like me, who I love that like artistic expression, I suppose, of building a new vivarium, when the barrier to entry involves filming, because especially for like the builds that I'm doing now or I'm about to do now, um, it's like a very fleeting feeling where I'm like, I really want to do this, and then I think about filming, and it's like, nope, not tonight. Like that's
Yeah.
just what happens, unfortunately. And if it was a more kind of trivial tank or whatever, like I built a nice vivarium right over here for my girlfriend's frogs. That was fun. Like I didn't have to film it. I built the tank from scratch. I set the tank up. I did it all myself. I planted it. I gave it to her sitting on her desk. Like that was fun. But there's always that little kind of demon on your shoulder being like, you should have filmed it, you idiot. Like, this is a cool tank. People would have enjoyed to see this. But, at a certain point, you just got to do it for yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes you gotta do those things for you in order to continue to enjoy it for everybody else, and that's
Exactly.
that's completely understandable.
Yeah. And that's kind of like what the trips we do are for. Um, like, disconnecting from the reptiles and whatnot. I mean, even surrounding yourself with other reptiles, but from the like grind of the room and stuff for even a week or even a few days is just like, Like when you have a free weekend and you've done all the reptile chores and you go in there for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour just to mist and kind of look at people or the reptiles, then it's great. But when you have to kind of struggle through it throughout the week, it's not so great.
So how much local herping do you and your partner do?
Almost
Do you
zero. Yeah.
really?
Yeah, unfortunately. We went out once last year to do it. Um but truthfully, like unless it's a really scheduled thing and like a social event with friends, it's challenging for us to find, or I guess make the time to, like, you know what, let's leave our own reptiles and all the things that we have to do to go and find some other ones outside.
Oh man, taxidermists,
Yes.
taxidermists.
Tachydermis,
Yeah,
yes.
the grass lizards, right?
Indeed.
Okay. Um, these guys, you really talk them up on your channel. Like
Yep.
so much so that I have seen them in Petco and almost gotten them. Um, just because of you. So, uh, they're like little monitors, and like I guess, yeah.
Yep.
What Mike always says they're like little monitors, and they come out and eat on his hand and stuff.
Oh my, I
Yeah.
haven't seen that.
Yeah,
So how many of
they're
those?
really, really cool. I have two species. I have um one that's called the green grass lizards, I guess. There's not very good common names, but there's Tachydramus smaragdinus. And then there's the other species, Tachydramus dorsalis. The dorsalis kind of look, I guess, like body shape and size similar to like a green anole, but their tail is, like this long. Um, and then the smaragdinus are much smaller. So, yeah.
Or they do you keep them for the same reasons of, or do you enjoy keeping them for the same reasons you do the dart frogs, the enclosure building, and they're kind of smaller.
Um,
You kind of got that style of that smaller Exoterra build animals going on.
Yeah, for now, like they definitely do very well in like a large enclosure. They're so active that they'll use every square inch of whatever size enclosure you can provide for them. A lot of like the tachydermist people that keep them on the forums and on Facebook and stuff have like massive 3x3x3 enclosures, like huge, nice displays for them. Unfortunately, we just don't have the space to give them that. But like when we have our own place and we have the space to do that, they will definitely be getting a larger tank because they use every inch. Like if the walls are climbable, they are zipping up and down them, eating crickets, grabbing things off the wall, just going crazy. The dorsalis themselves are much more handleable and tame, dare I say. They're very kind of chill to an extent where they'll come and check you out and they'll hop on your hand, they'll look at you dead in the eye, and
Wow.
like the other day I had even one of the babies that hatched 4 months ago, maybe somewhere around there. Um, like jumped out of the enclosure after a cricket, landed on the ground. And typically, when any small lizard of any kind hits the ground, it's just a mad dash, freaking out, panic to find something. But he literally kind of scuttled onto the rack, and Bree was sitting across the room so she could see him. And she just said, "He's looking right at you." I was like, "Really? Okay, interesting." So I like held down a cricket and he just waddled over to it, hopped onto my hand, grabbed the cricket, and I just put him back in the
Wow.
enclosure. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And
Wow.
That's
we don't
really
spend a
awesome.
lot of time with each individual animal really working with them. But even the time that we do dedicate, like that's pretty good. If I can do that, then somebody who has, a couple pets that is truly their animal, I suppose, could make it as tame as any,
Wow.
intelligent monitor or anything like that.
That's awesome. That would be way more accessible than a monitor. Um,
Yeah.
we we just had Bill Bradley on, and he's got a whole bunch of big monitors, and he's a big stuff guy.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We live in that small log cabin, and we can't do the bigs.
Yeah,
But
exactly. And that's what we love. Like I'd rather provide a kind of average size enclosure for a smaller animal so then that animal has space to go and do it,
yeah,
you know.
be
well,
them, yeah.
and do you have a chair in your reptile room where you can just sit and just, have sit back with the brew and just watch them enjoy their world, so to speak?
Yeah, I'll do that occasionally on weekends and stuff. I have a little like rolly ottoman that's meant to be for your feet, but I just kind of roll it around the room and I'll feed them or I'll miss them just so I get that activity of watching them uh, do whatever, drink off water droplets or hunt fruit flies or whatever it might be. And yeah, that's what I love to do.
Yeah.
Do you still have your Fiji banded iguana?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, the one thing we can't have.
Yep. One of
Well,
them.
one of many
Yeah.
probably, but the yeah, the
Ex
and iguanids are something that I've looked into because I'm not super a big fan of bugs, and I don't want to feed bugs, and I just I've had leopard geckos, I've bred leopard geckos, I've done lizards. I just if it cannot do bugs, I'll be much happier. Um, the iguana, because they're vegetarians, that's so I've thought about getting iguanas before in that
Mhm.
aspect, but they're huge and, well, like a green iguana.
Yeah. Yeah, like truthfully, it's a really a huge shame that the US can't own them because they are truly, in my opinion, the perfect iguana. They stay relatively small. Even if you have some savage one that bites you, like sure, maybe it'll give you a deep enough cut for a couple stitches, but it's not gonna, dismember your arm or take apart part of your face or anything like that. Like the power of a male green iguana could do pretty easily. They're very chill, I guess, kind of almost sedentary. Like they pick their spot, they sit, they bask, they walk over to another spot, and they just sit there. And until either we come up with food or maybe something scares it or whatever, and he zooms away. But beyond that, they're like pretty nonchalant and tolerant of most things. Like ours came to us as I guess like a sub adult to an adult and wasn't really all that tame at all. But just having him in the room and hanging out with us, he tamed down to like hopping on your shoulder, hanging out, like to the point of where it was kind of an issue because we'd have people when we're away or whatever come to look after the collection and and they were like, be careful. He's not aggressive, but he will come out and hop out and hang around and that kind of deal. So that I guess has kind of rectified itself now that he's in his larger enclosure. He's not in the room, like he's just outside the room. So we're not pestering him and sitting in front of him for hours and hours every day. So he's a little bit more timid, or yeah, I guess timid is a good word for it. But he's still, you get your arm in there and he'll still hop out. And every now and then we'll take him out and kind of hang in the reptile room with him if we know we're going to be in there for a while.
So what are your goals now, with the new job, and is to roll on, or, you're saying you were changing things up a little bit, what avenue are you going into?
Um, I would just say I am trying to be more diligent, I guess. Like I don't want to be the person that bumps numbers. Like I know that the reptile room tour is, the more animals you have, the more impressive it is. And that's cool and good. But that's why I try and put that message in there of, this isn't for everybody. This is a full time job on top of another full time job on top of another full time job. Like if you're trying to do YouTube, that is difficult. If you're doing all the, the reels and the shorts and the TikTok and the Instagram just in general, and now YouTube Shorts and all this stuff. Like, it's crazy. So kind of the goal for the future is, especially this year, really get upgrades done, get the tanks that we need built. We really don't have plans to add pretty much anything other than maybe like a hog nose or two just for breeding. Is there anything else I'm missing? I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, we do have Breeze back there now. She's whispering in my ear. She We have the male Nigroceps, the Boega. We're getting one, and then we
Oh,
have a male Oxycephalum, the Borneo locale, coming as well. So unfortunately, we had a pretty sad story with the other male that we had, to no fault of our own. Basically, just got skinny. We had no idea what was going on. He ended up passing away, unfortunately, and we had my good friend and our vet perform an autopsy on him, or a necropsy, and found that there was a bunch of polyps, tumors,
Oh,
growths, I suppose, like in his abdomen, down near his lower GI tract. So I guess it was good to know that it wasn't really our fault. That's kind of
yeah.
reassuring, but
Or you didn't have something in your collection.
yeah, that too.
Disease
Yeah,
wise,
having
that would be the worst thing.
oh yeah, yeah, and especially with all the hog noses and stuff we added, like that was definitely a real fear of ours. Of like,
yeah.
please don't be any of the various pathogens or viruses or diseases, whatever you want to call them. Um,
Yeah.
that yeah, we were just hopeful it wouldn't be that, and thankfully it wasn't. So
Yeah. No,
uh,
that's very good.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what kind of boy are you getting?
Just a male Nigroceps.
Okay.
Yeah, we produced the only 2 clutches in Canada so far, and that
Wow.
was with returned or retained sperm. One was when we had the male. We were about to send both to one of our good friends in the U.S. who deals with a lot of Boega, and we are like, she's not looking so, I guess, shipping ready. Like, she was very large and very bloated, and we were like, I have a feeling she might have eggs. So we didn't end up sending her. And then probably a month later, she popped out a clutch of 3 eggs. Those hatched. They're doing great. One didn't make it. Did the egg go bad, Brie? Oh yeah, that's right. So we had like a overhydration issue, and the egg essentially like super saturated and exploded. And yeah, unfortunately, that one didn't make it. But with the other 2 that did hatch and were doing good, are in fact doing good, eating very well. And then just last weekend, yeah, last weekend we had like, not yesterday, but the weekend before that, we had a clutch drop of 2 eggs or 3 eggs. 3, 2, 3 eggs. Okay, yeah, both were 3 eggs. So retained sperm, as far as we could
Do
tell. The eggs look great. So
do the babies struggle with eating or?
um truthfully, Bree is the raiser of the babies. I can't answer that, but
Oh
just
man, the
if
snake guy invites the turtle guy onto the podcast and starts asking snake questions that he's gonna
I
need
know
help
well
on.
enough to where I can answer it, but yes, like Bree is the one who loves the Boyega more than anything. So in general though, yeah, they've been eating pretty well since the beginning. We don't bother with, a lot of people will say, oh, feed them rat tails or pinky feet or whatever people will give them. We
Whatever little
essentially
body
just
part.
started with some, yeah, we essentially just started with some assist fed pinkies, and that's not full. Like, if the viewers aren't familiar with it, that's not full like shoving a pinky down its throat. Basically, you kind of get its back fangs hooked on it, and then the snake will either decide to eat, or it'll reject it and kind of launch the pinky as far as it can as it rejects it from eating. So Yeah, that thankfully we had a couple right off the start that like a couple attempts that didn't work out, but ever since they've been pretty rock solid. They're growing, they're shedding, they're eating, mostly with either very limited assist feeding or even I believe one of them is just eating. Like we'll place a pinky in its enclosure and it'll be gone when we check later that day. So I know I hear a lot of stories from people in the States, force feeding them rat tails or whatever for months and months and months and months. And you're like, guys, maybe try something else if it's not working. Like,
Yeah, that's well, and aren't they aren't a good chunk of Boega like a lizard eater in general in the
yeah,
wild?
lizard, bird. I would
So
imagine they're even to some degree potentially even eating insects. I don't think there's been any studies that have shown that, but I wouldn't be surprised, is more, I guess, what I'm saying. Definitely more lizard feeders and birds, though.
so I wonder on that Boega thing if people are like you hear it with carpet pythons anyway. Like they feed a bigger item than you think you should feed. So I mean, I guess it is kind of a colubrid-ish type snake, so you'd be on the other end of the spectrum, but
Yeah, I mean, they seem to take it like a pinky to them looks like, nah, man, there's no way. Like, there's no way this is happening. But yeah, they take it, and even if it's just like a pinky head or whatever, like that's what we're trying to get into them more than just the basically like dead tissue of a tail, a little bit of
yeah.
muscle, that kind of deal. Like we'd rather have some nutrients in there, and even if it is mostly fat on a pinky anyway, um, at least it kind of gets them kick started. At least that's kind of my thought behind it, I suppose. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's definitely more nutritional value in a whole pinky than a pinky leg.
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's.
and there's been studies done on the digestion in snakes, and if you actually cut a pinky or cut the mouse, skin doesn't digest super quickly.
Hmm,
So if you actually cut the frozen thawed mouse before you feed it, it'll let the digestive enzymes get into the mouse quicker, and it has been shown to help digestion in snakes. So
that
Oh,
makes
really?
sense.
that
Yeah.
so when you're feeding a tail, that's all skin. It's not even really. It's a whole bunch of work for no payoff.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
I
So
know. Yeah, that's what I do for when I feed pinkies to the turtles. Is I cut the pinky in half as if I'm going right down its spine, and cutting the head in half, and just exposing it all, and it does seem to activate their appetite more than
Hmm.
just giving a whole pinky. Yeah,
Yep.
it's excuse me. So I mean that works, for the box turtles more, and for the aquatic turtles. But yeah, so it's interesting. I hadn't heard what you had just mentioned, Matthew, of studies being done about it.
yeah. Um, are you ever gonna do March Madness again?
Nope. Nope.
just,
I would
just
love
a dumb
to.
question for you.
Yeah, I would love to, but the May Madness was a lot. Like I don't know how I did it back then. I mean, I guess like the video quality wasn't necessarily, at least in my eyes, as high as it is now. There was a lot less editing put into those. It was more just like I need to get a video out every day. Let's go. And truthfully, it didn't really grow the channel much at all. Like during those months, obviously you're getting more views because you're posting more videos, but just in general, and especially the way the algorithm is now, like I don't think it would be very beneficial, if at all, to post every day like that. Unless it was, up to kind of my standards now, then maybe it would be worth it. But the fact of the matter is like my audience is mostly the like 18 to 24, and then the second highest category is the 24 to or 25 to 34 or whatever. And we got jobs, man. We can't sit there and
Yeah,
watch 20-minute YouTube videos every day. Like maybe you can, but every single day for 7 days straight, like there's no way.
yeah,
um so yeah.
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 That's
But
what I was going to say. It was like, who has time to watch them? it's yeah. I mean, I'm retired, and I say that. you Yeah, because I've got all my other animals to take care of, plus my art business. It's and but I can set my schedule, and it's there's a lot of stuff to do outside. When I move the turtles outside, and it's just like, when does everybody have time to do everything, let alone make them? It's I don't know how you guys do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, for real. I don't know. Sometimes I think it's like, you know what? How nice would it be? Like every now and then you'll have that like epiphany of like, don't people get bored? Like, how do you come home from work and have nothing to do? Like, oh man, I guess I got to make dinner. Like, okay, cool. But like, what about, either video games or like art or YouTube? Like, I've always had a hobby to like fall back on, but now moving out here, like I've been exposed to a lot more people that just like come home and do nothing. Wow,
Yeah,
that
that's very
is
prevalent here.
ast- that is astonishing to me of just
Yeah.
how crazy it is. Because I used to do art all the time, and unfortunately, since university, it stopped. But uh, yeah, like
What
it.
what type of art? What type of art?
Most kind of multi-medium. I did a lot of like pencil drawing, and then towards closer to when I stopped, basically, I did a lot of like watercolor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What were your subject matters?
Pardon me?
What type of subjects did you paint and draw?
Mostly just kind of nature related stuff. A lot of it was for like art class in high school. And I did like some shells, and then I did a picture that I took in Hawaii of my sunglasses kind of reflecting off a just like the sunset. And so I painted that. And then, yep, then university started, and it was like, I don't have time for any of this anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I could relate. Like you, I got a bachelor's in biology and another one in wildlife and fishery sciences, and so two majors in 5 years. And
Wow.
I was only able to do my oil painting, on spring break and winter break, and that sort of thing, and keep my turtles. Yeah, I don't understand how people can do nothing either.
Yeah.
It's do they watch TV? I mean, even when I'm watching TV, I'm brushing my dogs, or when I'm sculpting, I have a podcast going. I mean, it's like, yeah. I mean, I don't understand nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wrap my head around it. Even when I'll be sitting here and I'll be like in the reptile room feeding, and I'll be listening to a podcast, and then I'll be answering an Instagram message, and like my head just bounces all over the place. But I can't imagine just sitting here being like, yep, I guess we're watching, The Office for the eighth time. Like, nope. Where do you guys have time for that? I don't understand.
Well, this goes to like there's the people who talk about doing things and the people who do things.
Yeah.
Like, I've talked about doing a podcast for a long time. I've talked about doing YouTube. You've done it. You did it. I didn't. I talked about doing it. So, let's you choose to do it.
Yep. Hey,
Otherwise,
you're
you're
doing it
just gonna
now.
go home and
What
watch a
matters?
movie.
Yeah, well, and then I'm going to make Matthew help me make a couple of ponds on our place, because
Nice.
he made the mistake of saying that he's installed a couple of ponds for the landscaping company he worked for. So it's like, oh, really?
Perfect. Tell me more while you're making one in my backyard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he'll get paid.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It'll be a write off, because that we can draw. Joel's my partner is an outdoor photographer, and so, and we have our works in the same gallery that represents us in the little art town, the little Sedona of the Black Hills, Hill City. And so, he goes, we need a pond so that the birds will all come to it. It's great background. Okay, I'll talk to Matthew about that. Yeah. So it's a write off.
Nice. There you go.
So, yeah.
So, are there any species that you're looking or that you would add if they came around? Is there anything special to you that you're still waiting for? Or
course, there always is. Um,
Such
yeah,
as
recently, chameleons, since being in Madagascar, have become like I never really let go of the chameleon bug. Like I've been I bred chameleons when I was like 14, maybe somewhere around there, 15.
Nice.
um, and have kept them for more years than I haven't kept them. So that is definitely something that when we have the space and the appropriate facilities, I suppose, then yes, they will definitely be coming back. Unfortunately, I don't see that being necessarily anytime soon. Um, and then I would say that I've also been looking at various different species of anole recently, because again, they remind me a lot of like Tachydramus. So there is that. And then
Well, and
frogs.
Ron St. Pierre has been kind of talking a lot of good about his anoles everywhere
Yeah,
lately.
I've been following
So,
mostly Armin, like from Herp Time, with all of his
okay.
really crazy whatever he has, like 30 different species of anoles or something. But
Holy cow.
yeah, yeah, I've noticed that Ron has definitely been bumping them up as well. So something that will come eventually. I've already talked to Armin about it, but I just said, I'm like, listen, man, this is an idea. I want to buy them from you, but it won't be anytime soon. And he's like, okay, well, let me know when the time comes and I'll have some ready for you. I'm like, cool, sounds good.
Perfect.
And then frogs, the larger fogga, there's imports very infrequently. Like we have done a group order last year, and I think we might do another group order this year. I don't know. I know there's one happening. I'm not a part of it currently, but if not, then I know there's some really crazy species coming in 2024 that I will probably just wait and sink my money into at that point. So this truly, like I said, is the year of like building stuff, having stuff more established and set up in like the more, I guess, future proof homes, like the larger terrariums and enclosures. And then after that, I'll be like, okay, let's reassess. What do we have space for? Anything? Who knows?
If you could keep anything, anything at all, it doesn't have to be reptile, amphibian related, anything at all, no laws, no money, and produce it, what would you have?
I would say probably either some rare species of like Parsons chameleon, like the just like orange eyes. I guess they're not really rare, but Parsons chameleon would definitely be one. Honestly, arowana, Asian arowana, another thing you guys aren't allowed to have. Those are something that I guess as I grew up, one of my really good friends kept them and never bred them, but he kept them and with like rays and stuff. And that's something that I would just love to have is like a really nice large enclosure or tank, I guess, like aquarium for them and just see their beauty. Like, I mean, they can run 10 to 50K for one fish, but like
Wow.
you can't beat it. It's one of the most primitive fish, and they are incredibly agile and they're just beautiful. So that's
This is
kind of an odd duck answer, but yeah, that's kind of what comes to mind, at least with the limited thought that I had to put into it.
this uh this is the second week in a row we've gotten a fish.
Hmm.
Yeah. The cuttlefish was the last one. So
Oh yeah, cuttlefish are. We actually produced them at Pisces. Like when I worked there, we not
oh,
produced them, but we'd buy eggs and hatch them in the store.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
All right, where can we reach you at, Mike?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, alpha.reptile. I'm on YouTube, Mike Tytula or Alpha Reptile. Either one you search, I should come up. Facebook, Mike Tytula. If you're going to add me as a friend, just send me a message telling me who you are first. A lot of random messages or a lot of like random requests. Some get through, some don't. So if you really want to make sure that you get accepted, just give me a little phrase or two saying, hey, whatever, watched you or saw you here, enjoy this. Just a quick little introduction, and that'll basically guarantee you get a accepted friend request. Beyond that, that's pretty much it. I do have a TikTok. I don't really post there, so I'm not even going to bother mentioning it.
Fair enough. For the show, you can find us on YouTube at Herp Talk Radio, any podcast platform. Patreon, still not up, but it should be. The only reason we're doing Patreon really is to try to cover the upfront cost of the show. Other than that, I don't really care to make money. I'm doing this for fun. I just want to preface that it does cost money to make this every month.
Certainly
So,
does.
yeah, Instagram, Herp Talk Radio, and any questions, please reach out at herptalkradio@gmail.com. Have a good day, night, evening, whatever time it is you're listening. We'll see you next time.
See you. Good night.